South Florida, it's a place of palm trees, neon lights, and endless highways. But out here, beyond Miami's glow, the Everglades hide shadows you don't want to meet. On this run, I found myself hunted by men, by the swamp, and by something darker waiting in the night. Stay with me to the end, because this is one story you'll never forget. And if you love real trucking stories mixed with suspense and mystery, make sure you hit subscribe to mile marker 31 so you don't miss the next ride. That night in South Florida changed me forever. I made it through, but not without scars and not without ghosts. Out on the highways, danger doesn't always come with warning signs. It comes fast, and it never lets go.
Chapter 1. The Heat of the South. I rolled into Miami just before dusk, my rig groaning under the weight of a reefer trailer that was about to get stacked with produce. South Florida in late August doesn't play fair. Heat hangs heavy in the air, a wet blanket that smothers you the second you step outside. The city was alive, though. Neon lights beginning to flicker on, palm trees swaying as if they'd had enough of the day's punishment. My dispatcher had lined up a haul of mixed vegetables and fruit, mostly tomatoes, peppers, and crates of Florida oranges bound for distribution centers up north. The Miami warehouse district is a maze of chain-link fences, semi-trailers jammed against loading docks, and forklifts buzzing like angry hornets. As I waited in line to get backed into a dock, I let my eyes wander across the skyline. High-rise condos reflected the last bit of orange sunlight, and I thought about how different my life was from the folks who lived up there, sipping cocktails, staring out over Biscayne Bay. For me, this was just another run, a long haul that started in Miami sweat and would hopefully end in the cool air of the Carolinas. But that night felt different. The air was too still, too thick. My CB radio crackled with chatter about traffic jams on I-95, and I heard one driver warn about strange cars tailing rigs near Hialeah. I didn't think much of it at the time. Miami has always had shadows lurking in the alleys, but I should have paid more attention. By the time my trailer was loaded and the paperwork signed, the sky had gone black. The city pulsed behind me as I eased out onto US 27, aiming north toward the Everglades. I've driven through South Florida 100 times, but every run feels like a gamble. Miami isn't just heat and beaches, it's crime, desperation, and people who would sell their souls for $1. That night, I didn't know yet, but I was about to get pulled into all three. Chapter 2. Restless. On US 27. US 27 is a strange beast. Truckers call it the alligator alley of the poor man, though the real alligator alley is I-75, stretching straight across the swamp. US 27 runs northwest out of Miami, hugging the edge of the Everglades like a stubborn scar. It's 2 lanes most of the way, with long stretches of nothing but sawgrass, black water, and the occasional panther crossing sign half bent from age. The hum of my engine filled the cab, the reefer unit in back chugging to keep the produce cool. My windshield was a canvas of bugs, streaked with humidity and the ghosts of dragonflies that didn't survive their collision course. The deeper I drove into the glades, the more I felt that restless energy. Out here, the night owns you. No street lights, no gas stations, just miles of darkness pressing against the beams of your headlights. You start hearing things, splashes in the canals, cries of birds you can't name, sometimes even voices if your mind drifts too far. I rolled down my window just enough to smell the swamp. It was a thick, earthy rot mixed with salt and diesel from a passing boat somewhere far off in the waterways. I told myself it was just another night, just another lonely stretch of highway. but I couldn't shake the itch in my gut that something was waiting for me. About an hour in, I spotted the dim glow of a rest area sign, Clewiston, 5 miles. Relief washed over me. I wasn't tired, but the thought of stretching my legs under some fluorescent lights felt like a lifeline. I didn't know yet who I'd meet there, or how much his presence would twist the night into something I'd never forget. Chapter 3. The Stranger. At the rest. Stop the rest area near Clewiston was as plain as they come. A small concrete building with vending machines, a couple of picnic tables under flickering lights, and 3 rigs parked crooked across the faded lines. I pulled my Peterbilt into the far corner, engine idling low, and stepped out into the muggy air. That's when I saw him. A man in his 30s, maybe 40s, sitting on the curb near the vending machines. Sweat plastered his shirt to his chest, and his eyes darted from the parking lot to the road like a trapped animal. He had a backpack slung at his side, too heavy looking for a simple traveler. "Hey, driver," he called, his voice tight. "Heading north." I nodded slowly, cautious. Hitchhikers are rare these days, especially at truck stops. Most of us avoid them like the plague. Insurance, safety, you name it. But something about the desperation in his voice made me pause. "My ride ditched me," he said, licking his lips. "Just need to get as far as Orlando. I can pay for fuel." It didn't sit right. His story was shaky, his hands trembling as if he hadn't had sleep in days. Still, against my better judgment, I found myself saying, "Fine, but you stay quiet in the cab and no funny business." His relief was too quick, too heavy. He grabbed his pack and climbed into the passenger seat like a man boarding a lifeboat. The second the door shut, the air in my cab changed. He smelled of sweat, adrenaline, and something metallic like blood or gunpowder, and that damn backpack sat between his legs like a coiled snake. Chapter 4. A Hidden Weight. We rolled out of the rest area, the stranger fiddling with his backpack straps, eyes fixed on the windshield. For 10 miles, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "Name?" "Carlos," he muttered. "Where you from?" He hesitated. "Miami, born and raised." It was a lie. I could hear it in the way his voice cracked. I'd hauled enough loads to enough places to know when someone was faking their roots. Then I noticed it. The backpack wasn't just heavy, it was rigid. Its shape bulged awkwardly under the fabric. He kept one hand on it at all times, like it might run away if he let go. "You running from something?" I asked. He snapped his head toward me, eyes sharp. "Just trying to get out of Miami, that's all." The way he said it made my stomach twist. Miami is a city people leave for a weekend, not a place they flee from in the middle of the night with nothing but a backpack. And in my rearview mirror, far behind us, 2 sets of headlights appeared. They weren't gaining fast, but they weren't falling back either. I had a feeling the backpack wasn't just carrying clothes, it was carrying trouble. Chapter 5. Shadows in the rear view. The night highway has its own rhythm. You learn to recognize when something is off, when the flow of headlights and taillights doesn't match the normal pulse. Out on US 27, traffic is sparse, so every vehicle behind you feels personal. And those 2 sets of headlights had been hanging back way too long. I kept glancing at the mirrors. At first, I told myself it was nothing, just late-night travelers headed north like me. But the longer I watched, the clearer it became. They weren't passing. They weren't falling away. They were stalking. Carlos noticed too. He tightened his grip on the backpack. His knee bounced nervously. "You know those cars?" I asked. His silence told me everything. I leaned into it. Said, "Listen, I don't mind giving a ride, but if you dragged heat into my cab, I deserve to know." He muttered, almost too quiet to hear, "Just drive." That's when the rear sedan pulled closer, headlights bright enough to blind me through the mirrors. The second car stayed offset, hanging in the left lane, pacing my speed. This wasn't random. This was formation driving. I felt sweat bead under my cap. Memories of CB chatter back in Miami came rushing back, warnings about rigs being tailed, hijack attempts. I thought maybe this was one of those crews that robs trucks for cargo. But something about their focus on my cab, not my trailer, told me it was about him. Carlos ducked lower in his seat. "You got cartel trouble?" I asked. He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes was pure fear. I adjusted my grip on the wheel, heart pounding. I'd run through the Everglades at night 100 times, but now the swamp around me felt like an ambush waiting to swallow me whole. Whatever was in that backpack, it wasn't worth dying for, but I was already in it, whether I liked it or not. Chapter 6. Okeechobee Nights. I decided to test them. Instead of holding steady on US 27, I slowed down, then turned onto a smaller 2-lane that looped toward Lake Okeechobee. The cars followed. Their headlights shimmered off the canals, bouncing across the dark water. All around us, the night came alive with swamp sounds, frogs croaking, gators splashing. The moon cast silver streaks across the massive black mirror of the lake as it came into view. I'd always loved Okeechobee at night. It had a strange beauty to it, peaceful but also haunting. Tonight, though, it felt like a trap. The levees, the sugarcane fields, the endless ditches, it all boxed me in. Carlos finally spoke. His voice shook. "They won't stop." "Who are they?" I demanded. He swallowed hard. "People I shouldn't have crossed. Cartel." He hesitated, then nodded. I cursed under my breath. Running contraband out of Miami wasn't new. I'd heard stories for years of drivers getting tempted into extra cash runs, but this was different. This wasn't about some drug mule. This was personal. "What's in the bag?" I asked again. "Money," he whispered. "A lot of it, and some papers they'd kill to get back." That explained everything. The cars edged closer. One of them surged forward, swerving like it wanted to force me off the road. I yanked the wheel just in time, my rig's tires spitting gravel. Adrenaline shot through me. This wasn't just stalking anymore. They wanted to end it tonight. I thought about the lake beside me. So big it felt like an ocean, so dark it seemed endless. If they forced me in there, my truck would vanish like a stone. I wasn't ready to die in Okeechobee. Not for him. Not for anyone. Chapter 7. Gunmetal at the truck stop. I made a split-second decision. Fort Pierce. If I could reach the truck stop off I-95, there'd be other drivers, lights, maybe even cops. Cartels don't like witnesses. I gunned the engine, every gear whining as I pushed the Peterbilt harder than I should have. The cars stuck like glue, their headlights flashing in my mirrors. When I finally rolled into the truck stop lot, my heart was hammering. The place was half lit. A mix of semis, reefers, and tankers parked nose to tail. Sodium lamps buzzed overhead. I killed my lights, eased between two rigs, and shut down the engine. The pursuers swept in right after, parking crooked near the entrance. The silence was suffocating. Carlos's hand trembled as he reached into his backpack. For a second, I thought he'd pull out cash, or maybe the papers. Instead, he pulled a pistol. Small, black, ugly. "You armed?" he asked. I shook my head slowly. "Then let me do the talking." Before I could stop him, the driver's side door of the first sedan opened. Two men stepped out, both dressed casual, jeans, untucked shirts, but their eyes were cold. One carried a bat, the other tucked his jacket back just enough to show the handle of a gun. They walked toward my rig like they'd done this 1,000 times. Carlos leaned forward, whispering, "If they get me, they'll get you too. You understand?" I understood more than he realized, because I knew this truck stop might not be big enough to hold what was about to happen. Chapter 8. Highway of Fire. The truck stop in Fort Pierce didn't stay quiet for long. The two men advanced, and I realized there was no way out but through. Carlos's hand shook around the pistol, his knuckles pale in the dim cab light. "Stay here," I hissed. "You pull that trigger, you'll never walk out alive." But Carlos ignored me. He cracked the passenger door, stepping down slow, keeping the gun low at his side. The cartel men stopped about 10 yards away, calm, deliberate. The one with the bat smirked like this was nothing more than business. "We just want the bag," he said, voice smooth like oil. "Give it up, and no one gets hurt." Carlos raised the pistol, his whole body trembling. "You're not getting it." The man with the bat chuckled, then whistled. From the second sedan, 2 more men climbed out, both armed. My gut dropped. This wasn't intimidation anymore, it was an execution squad. I grabbed my radio mic, flipped to channel 19, and barked, "Any drivers at Fort Pierce? I've got an emergency. Armed men in the lot, need help now." My voice cracked through the static, but I had no idea if anyone would respond. The cartel guys drew closer. Carlos shouted, his words tangled in fear. Then it happened, too fast for me to process. A gunshot cracked the night, echoing off trailers. Shouts erupted. Drivers leaned out of cabs, floodlights switched on, and chaos filled the lot. I yanked Carlos back into my rig, slamming the door. "Buckle up!" I roared. The Peterbilt roared to life, tires screaming as I ripped it out of the space. The cartel men scattered, gunfire sparking off metal as I barreled toward the exit. The highway swallowed us, I-95 stretching north like a black ribbon. But they weren't done. Both sedans shot out behind me, their headlights wild, their bullets spitting fire into the night. I swerved across lanes, horns blaring from other motorists. My trailer rocked, the reefer unit rattling under the abuse. Carlos clung to the dash, the backpack strapped tight against his chest like a life vest. "Why didn't you just give it to them?" I shouted over the chaos. "Because if they get it, I'm dead anyway," he gasped. The speedometer climbed. 90. 95. The Peterbilt wasn't built for this, but survival makes you do stupid things. Cars blurred around me, horns and lights like a fever dream. This wasn't a highway anymore. It was a war zone. Chapter 9. Secrets. In the swamp. By the time we hit north of Vero Beach, smoke curled from one of the sedans. They'd pushed too hard, blown a radiator, maybe worse. But the second car stayed on us, relentless. I knew we couldn't keep running forever. So I took the next exit, a rural stretch leading back toward the wetlands, dark, twisting roads, sugarcane fields rustling in the wind. The swamp embraced us again, thick and silent. Finally, I killed my lights, eased the truck into a dirt track, and shut the engine. The world went black, except for the glow of the moon. We sat in silence, listening to the cicadas, the drip of water, our own ragged breathing. Carlos finally broke. His words came in a rush. "I was working with them," he said, "running money between Miami and the islands. But I took my cut, a bigger cut, thought I could vanish. They'd never forgive that." "And the papers?" I asked. He pulled a folder from the backpack, the edges crumpled and damp. Inside were ledgers, Names, numbers, evidence of a network stretching from Florida to Colombia, enough to put men in prison for life. "They'll kill me to keep this buried," he whispered, "and anyone near me." That's when we heard it. The crunch of tires on gravel. Headlights flashed across the tree line. The surviving sedan had found us. Carlos gripped the pistol. "We end it here." I grabbed his arm. "You'll get us both killed." But it was too late. The swamp lit up with beams of flashlights, voices shouting in Spanish. Shadows moved between the trees, closing in. I climbed down from the cab, my boots sinking in the mud. My mind raced. Swamp water to my left, sugar cane to my right, cartel soldiers in front. I'd been in some bad spots as a driver. Ice storms in Wyoming, gang trouble in St. Louis, engine fires in Nevada. But this felt like the end of the road. Chapter 10, Sunrise over Florida. The gunfight in the swamp wasn't cinematic. It wasn't some slow-motion movie scene. It was fast, brutal, and terrifying. Carlos fired first, the muzzle flash lighting the cane field. The cartel answered with a spray of bullets that shredded the night. I hit the mud, crawled behind a stump, praying the reefer trailer wouldn't get lit up like a tinderbox. Voices shouted, footsteps splashed, gators stirred in the water nearby as if the swamp itself was watching. I don't know how long it lasted, seconds, minutes, maybe hours, but when the echo died, the silence was heavier than before. One of the sedans burned faintly in the distance. The cartel men had either fled or fallen. Carlos staggered toward me, clutching the backpack. His shirt was dark with blood. "You've got to take it," he wheezed. "Don't let them bury this." Before I could argue, he shoved the bag into my arms. Then he collapsed into the muck, eyes staring blankly at the stars. I stood there, frozen, the swamp buzzing around me. When the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, painting the sky pink and gold, I hauled myself back into the Peterbilt. The road out of the swamp felt endless. By the time I reached the safety of a way station, I was numb. I called the cops, handed over the bag, the ledgers, everything. They didn't believe me at first, but the names in those papers, they changed their tone real quick. Still, none of it mattered, because the truth is that night carved itself into my bones. Now, every time I roll through South Florida, every time I pass the edges of the Everglades, I remember Carlos. I remember the headlights in my mirror, and I remember how easy it is for the swamp to swallow a man whole. I survived, but not without ghosts. And every sunrise over Florida reminds me that some secrets don't disappear. They just hide in the shadows, waiting for the next poor soul to stumble onto them.
If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, subscribe to mile marker 31 for more tailies from America's darkest roads. And remember, the next story might just be the one that haunts you.